So I have been thinking about doing this video for a while. I have some time in the truck where I'm going to be driving. I drive quite a bit depending on where the jobs are and whatnot. Anyways, I have been wanting to talk about my perspective and my perspective shift and change on suicide, suicidal thoughts, and suicidal ideations. If you are watching this on your phone or watching it with your kids, or your kids are watching it, just take note of that. I'm going to be talking very openly and candidly about suicide, suicidal thoughts, and suicidal ideations. So if you don't want your kids hearing about that, then don't let them watch this video. Something that is very important to me, and again, my perspective, how it's changed over the years. So I'll start out in, I'm pretty sure I was in junior high, 7th, 8th, maybe 9th grade. I went to a small school, a couple hundred students total, and an older student, he committed suicide. I knew who he was, but I didn't know. And let me correct that. That's something that I've been trying to work on. So he died by suicide. So he shot himself in the chest with a 12-gauge shotgun, from what I can remember. And also from what I remember and from what I heard, something had happened with his girlfriend, whether they broke up or an argument or something. I don't know anything else about his life or the situation or anything, but he decided to put a shotgun barrel to his chest and pull the trigger. He was found, he was taken to the hospital, and again, from what I remember, people saying and talking about, he was awake and alert enough while a lot of this was going on that he was making statements such as, I'm sorry, I don't want to die, things like that. Showing regret or showing that however you want to look at that. He ultimately died. His younger brother was a grade or two below me, so I remember sitting in class and him being in those classes after that happened, and me thinking, like, holy crap, his brother killed himself. And how crazy that was, how hard that was for him, just imagining or trying to imagine, which I had nothing to even go off of. I was very sheltered growing up. I was very naive about a lot of things. So to hear that somebody had shot themselves in the chest with a shotgun and then died, and then their brother, and me trying to think about what that might be. Okay, a couple years goes by. My next interaction or experience with suicide is another person at my school hung himself. At this point, I'm older, he's younger. He's in the same age range as my younger sister. My younger sister knew him, was friends with him, and so it was extremely difficult for her, extremely difficult for, again, the school, a small school, and again, from the outside looking in, thinking, man, this is crazy. How does something like this happen? And reflecting back on that, I remember hearing comments about there being, signs, or that he was depressed, that he was dealing with stuff, that he had reached out, that he had said things about that he was going to kill himself, and that people didn't know how to take that, didn't know what to do with it, didn't know. And so I remember there being a lot of conversation and feelings of guilt about not being able to help him, and then it being too late. Okay, fast forward a little bit to now I'm an adult, I'm married with kids, and we have some neighbors. We become friends with these neighbors, have them over to our house to eat dinner and hang out. They have us over to their house to eat dinner, hang out. A lot of days, even if it wasn't like a formal gathering, it would be, outside in between our two houses, having conversations while the kids are playing outside, whatever that might be. And remember having conversations with this couple, husband and wife. The husband, a military veteran, and in my eyes, a very successful husband, father, had a good job, had a nice house, had beautiful kids. But having beginnings of some conversations where they're trying to express that he is dealing with PTSD and issues associated with PTSD, that he was taking medication to try to help with some different PTSD symptoms and issues, but that side effects from the medication were almost worse than the symptoms and issues coming from PTSD, and that was a constant struggle between taking the medication or not. Again, I think very, very, not very deep conversations. And again, me hearing it, still naive about a lot of things, and having never experienced anything close to it myself. So again, just trying to listen, trying to understand, but being like, man, I have no clue what this is. But trying to be supportive, etc. I become a police officer during this time. And so now at work, I start to have interactions with and experiences with suicide. People successfully committing suicide or dying by suicide, and me showing up either before, during, or after that sequence of events. So then gaining very personal and one-on-one and intimate experience with suicide. What it looks like, what it smells like, what it sounds like, what the immediate aftermath sounds like, looks like, smells like, what it looks like, when they attempt suicide but it's not successful, what that looks like, and working on getting that person help. So during this time that I'm starting to have those experiences and interactions, I'm at home. It's a Sunday, and we had since moved away from that neighborhood. So that couple that I was talking about, the wife calls. I can't remember if she called me or Katie, but then ultimately I get on the phone and she says, hey, my husband is having a really hard time and he is talking about killing himself, and he took a pistol and he left the house, and I don't know where he is. I don't know what to do, and I need your help. So I hop in the car, I drive that way. I called our dispatch to let them know what was going on so we could get, more people to look for this guy, my friend, and see if we could find him. She told me, it hadn't been very long, so kind of a general area maybe of where he had walked to or area that he could be in. I drive over there and I find him, and he's sitting on the curb and holding the pistol in his hand and just sitting there. So I let dispatch know where we're at. I also let them know that I'm gonna contact him and talk to him, and that for when officers arrive, for them to just give us some space a little bit. So at this time I'm an officer, but I'm off duty, and this is my friend. So I get out, say, hey man, I'm gonna come sit by you, is that okay? He says, yeah. I come sit down next to him. I said, hey, hand me the pistol. I'm going to take the pistol. Is that okay? And as I'm asking him, I'm already taking it out of his hands. He doesn't resist that at all. And I set it to the side. And he's just, you can imagine, he's just a wreck. And he's expressing and telling me, trying to tell me what he's dealing with and why he wants to kill himself. So I listen. I don't know what else I'm supposed to do, because this isn't like every other call that I'm going to as a street cop. This is my friend. Some officers arrive, they give us that space, they let us talk. I'm talking to him. His wife shows up shortly after as well. She's in the car with some young kids in the car, and we're sitting on the curb talking. I let him know that it's going to be okay, that I want to help him, that, hey, I called the police. If you want to get mad at anybody, get mad at me for that. Your wife did not call the police. Your wife just called me to help. I'm the one that called the police. And that, hey, believe it or not, and you need to believe it, people love you, people care about you, and we're here to help you. So, long story short, getting him resources, getting him help, I take that pistol and also go to his house and take, this is a conversation with him and his wife. We get the weapons out of the house, and I take them. That's as part of a safety plan to help keep him safe for the next little bit. So in the coming days after that, I talked to him about, I try to help him, try to be there just to talk, to listen, because again, guys, I've just had these periphery interactions with suicide. I mean, this was the closest that it had hit home to me, but I still could not even imagine what he was dealing with and what he was going through to get to that point. Long story short, he gets help. He starts doing a lot better. He gets in a better place. We get him all his guns back at his house. And this was years and years ago. He's doing great. His family's doing great. Fast forward through some time, being a patrol cop, street cop, again, seeing a lot of that. You know, every scenario you can imagine. And I'll tell you, I'll be straightforward. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. Even having had that experience with my friend, as a police officer, I had become very hard to the fact, or calloused to the fact. So I remember a call and showing up to a person's house or an apartment, and this is what we would call like a repeat offender, or a this person called several times a week saying that they were struggling with mental health issues and that they were going to kill themselves. And they would call the cops for help. And I remember one night I worked graves. And I remember one night showing up to this call, getting this person out of the house, out of the apartment, and talking to them. And I had just got to the point where there were certain questions we were supposed to ask. There were certain things we were supposed to do. We were supposed to, kind of go through this checklist. And that's how I just started treating it. If I could go down this checklist, and if they answered a certain way, that I could, do a forced committal on this person and get them to a mental health facility. And then at least we wouldn't have to deal with them for 72 hours or whatever the hold was. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going through that stuff. And I remember another officer there kind of put his hand on my shoulder and just, he didn't say, "Hey man, I'm going to take over," or anything, but he just said like, "Hey," and then it caused me to pause, and then he kind of took over. And I was like, yeah, like I'm so over this stuff. This guy keeps calling, he doesn't take us up on any of the help we offer him, etc., whatever it might be. And then after, I don't even remember what happened with that call, but I remember after it was over that this officer looked at me and was like, "What the hell was that?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You had zero empathy. You had zero compassion. You had, it was very obvious by your tone of your voice, your language, your body language, etc., that you could give two shits about this person, or if he killed himself or not." And I looked at him and I was like, yeah, I could give two shits if he kills himself. Looking back now, I know that's horrible. That I would think that I would be in that position. Even not knowing the person, it doesn't matter, right? Everybody's life matters. Everybody's life has value. Everybody needs to be here. It didn't even bug me. I was like kind of annoyed that he would bring it up, like, whatever, dude, and I just went on working. So, kind of moving forward to my next interaction with suicide, it started to be with myself. So I started just in my mind, by myself, in my own head. I was having suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideations. I was thinking things like whatever was going on, and I would just have thoughts like, well, I'll just go kill myself. Because then this thing, it won't be hard anymore. I won't feel it anymore. It won't be hurting me anymore. I won't be hurting the other people around me anymore. And all of this thing will just be over. I know that for a fact. For me, it'll just be over. And starting to have those thoughts and those ideations of different things I could do, how I could do it, when I could do it. Not thinking about my family or friends or anybody else but myself. And immediately upon starting to having those thoughts, having extreme guilt and shame and depression with those thoughts. Negative, super negative, harmful, extreme self-talk. After having a thought of I should just kill myself. So I was starting to struggle with those thoughts. Thought something was wrong with me. Thought I was messed up in the head. And just kept working. Just kept going to work. Just kept doing stuff that I thought I was supposed to do. I remember friends and family being like, anytime, any get together, big, small, whatever. Hey, like, are you okay? Asking my wife, hey, is Jared okay? And both me and my wife having no idea, myself having no idea, the answer was like, well, he works graveyards, he works nights. So shift work, his schedule is crazy, working nights, staying up during the day, on and off, overtime shifts, off-duty work, all this stuff. He's just physically exhausted and he's just a mess. That was all true. But my countenance, my face, the way I looked, the way I came off to people, that was also all part of a deeper problem of having these issues, these suicidal thoughts and ideations, being deeply, deeply depressed, having bouts of anxiety. So I started experiencing myself, but I'm not telling anybody, none of my close friends, none of my family, not my wife, nobody. And then the next thing that happens, we're getting into 2020, COVID lockdowns, all that stuff. We're having, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, all that stuff. So at work, we got super busy, dealing with riots, helping other cities with riots in their cities, just crime in general. And so being on the SWAT team now at this point, just super, super busy. So that's kind of masking or whatever. I'm just trying to stay on the subject line of suicide here. But then a friend of mine from high school, her husband was in Border Patrol, and he was part of BORTAC, which is the Border Patrol Tactical Unit. He was a tactical medic. Had been for a while. I never met him, but I would see, she would post things about training and stuff that he was doing, or traveling and where he was traveling and what he was doing. And at the time, I knew he was working in different parts of the country dealing with the same thing, big riots, big stuff. And she posted something on Instagram that was vague, but it was also very apparent that like something happened. And a friend from high school would just comment, like different stuff on Instagram, but I sent her a message like, hey, I'm not trying to pry or anything, but like, what's up? And she responded and said, my husband hung himself. I just found out my husband hung himself. And So now I have someone that I don't know really, never met him. He was working in Portland, the Portland riots and stuff. And that's where he was found, was, I guess, at work. I don't know any of the details. I remember the next morning telling my wife about it, and my wife and I talking about it again in the sense of like, I can't even imagine how tough that would be, for my friend, her family, her friends. And we were just like, man, how awful. That's what I was saying outwardly to my wife. In my head, this is how messed up I was at the time. Or this is what I was dealing with at the time. In my head, I was like, good for him. Good for him. He doesn't have to deal with it anymore. Whatever he was dealing with. Like, I envied him. And as I had those thoughts, I knew they were wrong. I knew that wasn't okay. But dealing with those thoughts myself, I was like, I was having super negative self-talk. Like, yeah, like you're a pussy. Like, you're a piece of shit. Like, why can't you just do it? He did it. And now it's over for him. He's good. And just along that line of thinking. And I remember a day or two after that, we were doing a vice presidential dignitary protection for Vice President Cheney at the time. And we were in the back. I was on a counter assault team. And we're just back there. The event's going on. And we're just doing our thing, making sure if something happens, we're going to respond to it or whatever. But I remember telling a buddy, and my assistant team leader at the time, telling him that I had heard that this friend of mine, her husband, had hung himself in Portland. And he was like, oh man, that sucks, sorry to hear that. And again, like, I don't even know why I was telling people that or telling him that. But as he's talking and I'm talking and saying the right things out loud in my head, I'm having super negative and inappropriate thoughts about, like, good for him. He did it. And negative self-talk about how I can't do it. Watching the aftermath from that, and watching my friend from high school and her kids, and them having to deal with that. I was even more guilty about having those thoughts, and that's when I started to think about, if I was going to do this, what it would do to my wife and my kids. And it still didn't stop me from having those thoughts. So then I just doubled down on how messed up I was, how I was crazy, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what to do. I just kept working. As my perspective and whatnot continued to progress with suicide, and suicidal thoughts and ideations. They kept getting worse. They were more frequent. I mean, I just got to the point where it was something I was dealing with every day. And if I was at work and working and training and operating, then there wasn't room in my brain for that during those times. And then when I would get home at all, at night, whenever it was, I was just a shell of myself. And I would then have the time and the quiet and the whatever you want to say, and my brain just didn't know how to deal with that. So it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So keep going through things, keep working. Friend and mentor and, you know, my boss a lot of the time that I was a cop, both on the street and on the SWAT team, Travis Gribble. He came forward and said that he was dealing with some stuff similar to what I felt like I was dealing with. That helped me a lot, but also I still was just like, didn't know what was going on, and felt like, you know, playing the compare game with Travis and like how long he'd been a police officer and a SWAT officer, and I had not done it that long, and so how could I be dealing with this stuff? I haven't even seen or done anything he's done. Anyhow, just this bad cycle. Some time goes by, have some really, you know, bad calls, SWAT calls, that just, it's all piling up, making things worse and worse and worse for me. But I just, you know, even though it was getting worse, I didn't know what else to do besides just keep showing up and going to work. Like my work phone would go off at home, and I was like, thank goodness. Oh man, like I was dying inside and in my head, and like, okay, my phone went off, I can go to work. Of course, doing that and being at work more just led to being involved in more stuff. September of 2021, I was involved in a shooting, and the shooting itself and everything was a bad guy. You know, no issues with like the shooting itself for me mentally, but it just like really pushed me over the top. And as part of that officer involved shooting protocol with our city and like most departments, you have to get cleared mentally to come back to work. And so I remember going to see the therapist, and Travis and my brother telling me, like, hey, when you go talk to her, you need to open up and tell her the stuff you're dealing with. You know, don't just tell her you're good to go and try to go back to work. So what did I do? I just told her I was good to go and went back to work. But I kept seeing her, which was good. And she started chipping away at all those layers and all the walls I had put up and everything. And I remember getting the courage to talk to her and tell her that I was having suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideations. And she told me, like, it didn't even faze her. And I was so confused. I was so surprised. She was like, yeah, okay. And she said, you know, the very first thing, like, hey, I want to make it very clear to you that is normal, that is okay, and this is some stuff we can start working on. And I was just mind blown. I just didn't even, I was like, it was like a light at the end of the tunnel, in the sense of like, okay, so I guess, is there a possibility I'm not crazy? Is there a possibility I'm not just messed up beyond fixing? Start going through that process with her. Again, just staying on this line of suicide. I'll have more videos about my story, my process, things that I went through. But this has been on my mind, oh man, for over a year. Trying to just make this video and talk about just suicide. I got hurt at work as well. I had to have shoulder surgery, and she was trying to get me to not work anyways because I wasn't doing well. And so she kind of tricked me into like, hey, get your surgery done. You're going to be off. You're going to be on light duty. Then I won't be working, and then we can get some mental work done during that same time frame. I remember it being really bad. She had been wanting me to get on to go see a psychiatrist and get on some PTSD medication to help me sleep, to help with stress, help with depression, help with all these things I was dealing with, help with nightmares. And I hate medication. Like I don't even take ibuprofen. I don't take stuff. It's just not something I do. And so I was just kicking back. I didn't want to do it. And I think it had been a week or two after my surgery. So my arm's in a sling. I can't move it. There's the pain associated with that. I'm not working now, so now I'm forced to just be dealing with stuff mentally because I can't mask it or hide behind work anymore. We're doing more work, her and I, working on this stuff. So stuff's bubbling up and coming up, and I'm trying to do what I need to do to get better. Now I'm at home all the time. I don't want to be at home. I want to be at work. And so one night it got really bad, really, really bad, where like kids are getting ready for bed. I went outside, sat on a bench, and just started sobbing because in my mind, I'm like, once my wife and kids go to bed, I'm going for a drive and I'm not coming home. And so facing the reality of that and what I knew that would do to them, but the pain and everything was overpowering all that, and I was like, yeah, that's gonna be bad. It's gonna be horrible for them, but I'm just done. And Katie knew I wasn't doing okay, but she didn't know what was up. I had never told her that I thought about killing myself ever. So, but I'm sobbing, crying uncontrollably. She gets me to come inside so I can tell the girls good night. Tell them good night. It's making me cry more because I had made up my mind that I was going to do it. And Katie came and sat next to me and just put her arm around me and just comforting me, telling me, she's there. And again, with her not even knowing what's going through my mind, she basically, for the rest of the night, wouldn't let me go. Like, wouldn't take her arm from around my shoulders or not holding my hand. And she 100% saved my life that night without knowing it. I went to bed, didn't sleep good, whatever. I get up, I go to the therapist the next day, tell her about it and how bad it was, and that I was gonna go kill myself last night. And she listened, and then she just looked at me and said, like, are you ready to try some medication? And I said, I just break down crying again, like, yeah, I don't know what else to do. Get on some medication stuff. Anyways, that's helping me in a lot of ways. But then also a lot of side effects, a lot of stuff I don't like about the medication. I having flashbacks to my friend and the conversations where he would tell me, this medication he's taking for PTSD is horrible and it's not doing, I'm experiencing similar stuff, still having thoughts and ideations. From that time forward and working through that stuff, whenever I would hear and find out that somebody died by suicide, even not knowing the person, it would just wreck me. In the sense of, like, how could I ever do that? And so I started to make this, turn the corner on still having these thoughts, still having these ideations, but then dealing with it and telling people about it. Want to wrap this up because I feel like I'm starting to get off on some tangents, but last thing that I wanted to talk about with this is telling your loved ones, and more specifically, if you're married or you're with somebody, your spouse or your partner. So the moment that I told my therapist that I was having suicidal thoughts and ideations, she started to encourage me to tell my wife. And I told her in no uncertain terms, there is no way on this earth that I will tell my wife that I think about killing myself. Often. She said, I know you feel that way. And I'm like, no, it's not going to happen. And having the thoughts, she's going to think I'm crazy. She's going to leave me. She's going to take the kids and leave. She's going to, in my mind, there was no positive result to me telling her that. As part of my treatment, I did ketamine infusions, and my brother would take me to the infusion, stay there, and then would drive me home. But there was a Saturday where he couldn't do it, and so my wife took me. It was my third infusion, and it had been several weeks since, with my therapist, that she had brought up, hey, you need to talk to Katie about this. You need to let her know so she knows at what level you're dealing with stuff. And I was like, no. But it had been several weeks since she had brought that up. So I go in, do my third ketamine infusion. I come out. Katie's helping me to the car. We get into the car, door shuts. And I think before she even starts up the car, I just told her, I think about killing myself, and I have suicidal thoughts and ideations all the time, and just start bawling and crying, sobbing. Something with the ketamine infusions, how that's changing my mind. Maybe I'll do a video on that as well. But I went from, there's no way, it's impossible, it is not even a thing that I will tell her this, to, without even really thinking about it, telling her. She listened, put her arm around me, cried with me, supported me. We drive home. During the drive, I'm telling her more than I had ever told her about anything. We get home, I'm still telling her. Get recovered to where, I'm kind of, pulling myself together. And that moment there is also another one that saved my life 100%, because still moving forward, I had a lot of times where I'm still having those suicidal thoughts and ideations. But now Katie knew. So now when I would tell her and look at her and say, hey, I'm not doing good, I'm not doing well, I'm not doing okay, now she knew that meant, oh, he's possibly having suicidal thoughts and ideations right now, and that's not good. It's normal and it's okay, but now what steps are we taking? How are we going to stay safe? All those things that I was trying to figure out and navigate on my own. In the past, before that, I would tell her I'm not doing okay, and she would on some level understand, oh, okay, he's stressed out, he's depressed, he's having anxiety, he's not doing okay, what can I do to help? But then after that conversation, understanding on the next level, oh, when he tells me he's not doing okay, he is not doing okay. So it was huge for me. She didn't leave. She didn't take the kids and leave. She didn't shame me. All she did was love me and support me. And yes, I understand that's a huge burden for her. But we're partners in this, right? We're married. We've been married for 17 years. So I'll end with that. If you're dealing with this stuff, and even if it's not suicide, tell your loved ones, your spouse, your partner about it. It relieves a burden off of you, and it also helps them understand where you're at. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you learned some things. These are my experiences, my memories, how I remembered them. I know it's long, but it's something that I've wanted to get out there and share for a long time. And if any part of this video can help one person, then that's all I'm looking for. That's the reason I made it. If it can help one person in any way. If you have questions, comments, concerns, please reach out. You can leave a comment. You can send me a message. And if you're dealing with something right now, if you're having suicidal thoughts and ideations, know that it's okay, know that it's normal, and that there's some things we can do about it. So the world needs you here. We need you here. Don't go anywhere. Be here tomorrow. And again, hope you found this video helpful. And it's a big relief actually to do this video, because I've been thinking about it, wanting to do it for a long time. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.